Yo, brothers, time to get at this Subaru. You guessed it with the thumbnail. It's pretty obvious. We're doing coilovers on this bad boy. From what I was telling you before, the thing bobbles around a bunch in the back, makes all kind of wacky noise that is totally unnecessary and totally unsatisfying. So we're gonna change that today. I got the Godspeed coilovers from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below. You guys can check them out. With these, I chose these because they're kind of like middle of the road, because Amazon had like a lot of cheaper ones that were like $200 and $300, but I really don't trust that price tag, even though they did look appealing. But the Godspeeds, if you watch a lot of our videos, we actually put these on Aaron's Del Sol, and he has nothing but great things to say about them, so I figured I'd go after them as well. They're like, I think they're like $650 plus shipping and whatnot, which is not a big deal. And then, because the other choices were like BCs and stuff like that. I mean, I probably could have looked around for some other choices, but just because these are kind of middle of the road and we have put them on other cars and tested them, we know they're good stuff. And also, I really liked about these is they have the camber plates on top for the fronts. They don't have them for the rear, but they do have them for the fronts, which is sweet. And they do have the 16-way adjustable shock for compression and rebound. So that's cool. I really enjoyed that. Now, one thing that we got to be aware of when we're putting these in is they say they mark them for front and back, but they don't specify what side. But as you can tell, it does matter because the ear on here for the bolt for the brake hose is gonna matter what side it is. So I just got to pay attention to which side I'm putting these on so that I put them on the right side and don't have to take them back off later. So first plan attack, we're gonna do the rears first. We gotta take the back seat out first, so here we go. 12 millimeters. They have these little covers on them sometimes. That one doesn't, but a little bolt cover right here to take the bottom part off. So we're gonna do that. And then this pulls up and out real easy. You gotta get the bottom off first, and then it exposes these bolts down here on either side. And don't forget the one in the middle. And same one on the other side. So then once you have all 3 bolts out, then you just lift it up, and then it clips in, so you gotta push it up. So it releases from the top, and then just gotta pull the belts so you can get it around the cushion. And it all goes out that way. So now, we got it exposed. Although we're gonna have to get the belt detached because it's covering the one bolt. I guess you could get like a swivel in here if you really wanted to, but as easy as it is with just one bolt back there, I'm gonna do that. And this is 14 on the seat belt. There we go. So it has this little tang right here. There's a hole up here that this actually slides into, so you gotta pull it out so that it actually removes from it. Now it's off and away, and we can access everything. So now I just gotta get this side. Oh.
Is that just me or
Light flicker?
the car just sat hard over here?
Probably did. These struts do that, man.
It just literally just sat and didn't come back up.
Yeah, if I didn't tell you guys before, one of the things that this would do is like bobble around and whatnot. But I remember one time I'm at like a stoplight and I stopped kind of hard, and I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden the rear of the car like sagged down, and I was like, okay, that was the moment where I realized it's time to get some struts. This is totally unacceptable. It's bad. So
It took that long.
all right, so we're done in here for now. We're gonna come back in here once we get everything broken loose down low, because then we just have the 3 bolts up here to release it so it'll actually drop out. Look, they're not even the same color, guys. All right, so now that I've got the wheels off, first, before we do anything else, we have to see how high it is right now as far as ride height. So now I don't have a level surface, and so a really good way to do this when you don't have a level surface is when you're up in the air, when the suspension is slung out. You measure from the fender here, to the axle nut. Use these things in rally cars, they're kind of high. We're definitely gonna bring it down some because it does look that sweet. So we're gonna measure first, so you what we're doing with that, and then we're gonna start pulling this thing apart. And a good thing to do with your rusty bolts, you always gotta juice them first because you could break your stuff, because look at how nasty this stuff is. It's pretty rusty. But luckily we don't have to do too much. We don't have to take the axle out. We don't have to do any of that. You'll see what we do. As we come to the rear of the car, and we look a little closer at the strut, we can find out which one goes where. If you look at the back here, This guy, where the brake hose gets attached, is on the back side. And I'm assuming the other side is the same way. So regardless of which way you're looking at it, the strut that you need to put on whatever side specifically, that bracket has to be on the back side of the car where the front rear bumper would be. We're gonna start taking this one off. So these boys are tight. So I gotta get the breaker bar. I might even have to get a pole on this. Because, ooh. Oh boy, here we go. Oh my God. I might have to put some heat on these boys. I'm afraid I'm gonna break it. You know what we do with rusty bolts? Stick a torch to it. Nice. Honestly, we're really lucky to be able to get that bottom bolt off, because if you look in there, let me get the camera. If you look in here, guys, that bottom bolt is right in line with the axle. So basically, if that thing was so hot or so seized up to where I had to use a torch, I would probably have burnt the boot off the axle, and that wouldn't have been good, and I can't get any closed end or wrench on it, so it wouldn't have been good that either way. So luckily that was good enough to where we break that loose. We'll find out on the other side. And sometimes these bolts get a little jammed up in there, so a good thing to do is to pry them out. This one's actually coming out really easy as far as the pry. Sometimes you gotta punch them out from the other side, but luckily this one was easy enough I could just pry it out. Now all I gotta do is just pry it from here to actually remove it from the knuckle. And now we can break it loose up top and it'll just fall out. Oh wait, gotta get the brake hose off first. Otherwise we're gonna have some problems. So with the measuring side of things, what I'm basically doing is going to the center of the fender, lining it up with the strut, and then going to the center of the axle. And what I got here is 18 1/4. And what I did is I wrote it down on all the corners so that I can see where they were, and then move it an inch down so that I can get it identical all the way around on all 4 corners. Clips work. They're pretty simple, but they can be a pain in the ass sometimes. I like using the side cutters the best because you can really grab onto it. Basically what I'm doing is just prying up on it. So once I get a little bit of space up in there, then I can get behind it with a screwdriver and pry up on it. The chemicals in this place, I know, they're obnoxious. Then you always gotta pull it through so that you actually release it there. So now we're gonna do the other side and then bring the car down and then release it. Well, actually, I'll probably just do all of it while I'm up, get them all released from the knuckle, and then we'll go down and release them all to get them out and do it that way.
Where's he at?
Oh, right here, right here.
Oh, okay. Right.
So with these guys, you saw me do the other side. They're not too hard, but when they get really rusty and nasty like this, a lot of times the best way to do it is to come from behind with a screwdriver and hammer them out. Get it loose enough because I don't want it flying across the room, but I got a nice hole, and then do the same prying thing I was doing on the other side. Guys, we're in a predicament. Somebody messed up. So look at this. So the bolts were coming in from this side, and with that problem is I can't get the bottom bolt out because it hits the axle. Remember I was talking about on the other side how it was really close? Yeah, it's really close. So because it's so damn close and it's hitting the axle, I'm gonna have to remove it. Well, at least what I'm planning on trying to do is I'm gonna get the nut off and push it through, because it does have some play in the axle. So I'm gonna see if I can get it far enough out to where I can get the bolt out and around, so I don't have to take all this apart just to get the axle out, because that's just a lot of work we don't want to do. So let's try it out. The axle is a 1 1/4, although it's probably millimeter. That fits really tight though. Yo, best way to get axles out?
Remove the knuckle and press them out.
Yeah, you might want to do that too. But you can do it with an air hammer. They're pretty cheap on Amazon actually. I think they're like 30 bucks. I'll put them in the description below. But put it in here and just. So this is the deets, bros. We got the axles out, and I got this big old pry bar. And if you go over the top, I pried it off of this flange first to push it out, and then I was able to get behind this flange and push it even further out, and it pivoted the whole knuckle down, and then Jake was able to come in here and actually punch the bolt all the way out. So now when we reinstall it, what we'll do is we'll just put the bolt in the other direction so we don't have this issue. These are just as easy as the backs, except for this one, you just got bolts that are holding the speed sensor on and a bolt holding the hose on over here. Those are the only two things, so rip them off. 12s, by the way. The same thing with the fronts as the backs. They don't specify which side is which, so we want to make sure that we pay attention to which strut goes where. The way I'm going to do this one is the flat is the front, because it kind of rhymes. Flat's the front, get it? Yeah!
Well, because you hope you have a flat rear.
Yeah, because nobody likes a flat rear.
Nobody likes a flat rear.
Same thing on the other side, then we'll go up top and drop everything out. We got Chippy J doing the job. Oh! So it's just 3 12s on top, simple stuff. And then just, oh, it hit the ground, you got lucky. So once you break all the bolts loose on top, the best way is to kick it out and push it down and out through this corner over here. Got to get it up and over the axle first, and then go down, kind of around the sway bar and over the knuckle, and then tilt it out so it just comes right out. And just make sure you don't snag your wiring, otherwise, or your hose. Otherwise, you're gonna have a bad day. Oh, and then just make sure the wasp nest on top of your strut is not active, because we could have died.
There's a dead carcass.
Yeah. That's wild.
Oh!
Is it a rock?
So look at that. Look how hard that is.
Oh my God, it is like concrete, dude. Seriously. Those dudes know how to make a home.
If you guys ever watched deeply and you've seen me beat one, I know nobody saw that.
No, nobody saw that.
Nobody saw me beat.
That's in the lost footage. Hey guys, follow me. Now that we're in the back. Same thing. You're on my hose. There we go. 12mm bolts all around the side. One. I need a swivel for that one, I can't reach it. And for that one too. Oh, I forgot to take a picture of all the... So if you do it with a hand tool, you won't need it. But since I'm doing it with a gun, I need a swivel, unless I want to take this whole top panel off, but that's completely unnecessary. So I'm just using a little swivel head, a little U-joint, and just make sure you don't whack yourself, because I've done it so many times. So same idea, kick the strut out to the side. This one's a lot easier, you have way more room. And it's out. Dude, another good way to get on these is just use a air ratchet, if you have air ratchet or ratchet, because the gun's obviously not ideal for the situation, because this fits right in there, no problem. Oh, and then one thing, guys, here, the cap here, because originally this cap stays on here to cover everything, but because of the adjustment on the top of the shock for the coilovers, you got to have this out so you can be able to adjust it. I think it'll hit it. I'm not going to try it and test it, but we definitely don't need that. The only thing I'm worried about, guys, down here is there's no seal where the strut actually mates to the top, so water will be able to get in there. Moisture will, obviously it has plenty of it already, so it might be a good idea that it's not sealed, but just something I'm taking note of, because a lot of times the strut will have like a rubber gasket in between the strut mount and the pillar that it's bolting into. So we don't have that on this situation, but we're just gonna go with it. Now it's time to put them in. So what I'm doing right now, really important. Obviously when it's brand new, this stuff goes together. The threads are silky smooth on it, but as you get dust and dirt in the threads, it's gonna get harder to move. And especially, I mean, these wrenches are pretty good, but they're not that big. So if it starts binding up, it's gonna be really difficult to adjust it later. So what I'm doing is I'm taking it, not all apart, but I am taking this bottom part off. and I'm gonna anti-seize all the threads so that regardless of how dirty it gets, it'll still stay pretty clean and it'll keep it from locking the threads up later. I mean, I probably would never put it down all the way, but let's be honest, this thing's huge. I'm ready to go off-roading right now. Rally. All right, so back to it. Now we got them all greased. They all got the anti-seize on them. Obviously, it looks like I got a little poop on them. Not a big deal. You know, the road will look worse anyway once we get dirt from the road. But so the way that these are designed is they have a height adjustment on the bottom, and that's where you saw me turning this out, where this bottom will actually turn and go up and down depending. And then here's your lock nut here. The spring tension is set singly by itself up here. So like if that's the whole advantage of like a monotube design, because with this it's different adjustments between ride height and spring tension. Now if it wasn't a monotube design, don't know the name for it, but where it's a single adjustment where the ride height is also adjusting the spring tension, it makes the ride really rough if it's really low because you're trying to get it's really short. So with this, it gives you the adjustment to be able to get really short, but also have the nice ride so it's smooth and whatnot. And then you have the adjustment for rebound for this shock. So let's put them in the car and then I'll show you a little bit more of how we get to do this. Yeah, so one thing I forgot to show you guys, and it might throw you off because it just threw me off. This top plate actually pivots. If you push on it, see how it pivots down like that? So obviously you want your camber adjustment perpendicular to the car. So what I had messed up, because obviously this has like kind of tapers down a little bit, and the way this was looking is I was going to put it in with the taper, but if you look how it was going to line up, if it was going to bolt in the way it was before, it would come in like this and your camber adjustment would be going in the wrong direction. So we can't do that. What I had to do is take this and put it in the right direction, but see how it looks like it wouldn't be right because of the way that it's tilted back. So you gotta push the plate up so it actually sits in the car correctly. So just make sure you check that when you're putting in, because that might mess you up and make you think you got the wrong stuff or whatever be the case. Since these struts are going to be a lot shorter, what we have to do is jack up the car. So if you guys are doing this at home, having a second jack will really help you out. Actually, I got this one pretty much right. But with the other side, I actually had to jack it up some to get it to, because I had it adjusted so low. So the bolt holes wouldn't line up unless I jacked up the control arm. The way that you actually adjust the ride height on here is you gotta have this collar loose, and then these have to be locked together up here. And depending on whether you wanna go up or down, right now I wanna go down, so what I'm doing is grabbing the top ring with the tool and spinning it in this direction. See how it's spinning the whole tube? So that's threading the tube into this and making it shorter. And then, so I can get this bolt hole lined up down here. Knuckle, and then there it is. You're wrong. So this is a cam bolt. This is what I was talking about a little earlier. See how it has this bump out? And you can see that it's only on the top side. As I roll around, it gets flat. So it has this bump. And so what that does is when it goes into this hole, it can dictate whether the knuckle is further out or further in. And that's the traditional way of adjusting camber. So we don't really need to worry about where that's located on this, just because we have the camber plates on top. So I'm just gonna throw it in there, I'm gonna put it in the middle of its adjustment. So I'm gonna put it straight up and down, so it's not adjusting any camber in that sense. And then I'll just lock it down there and then adjust all the camber up top. And it does matter what direction you come in, because the side over here is big enough for that cam bolt to slide in. This side's not, so you gotta make sure that you're in from this direction. Or just check your strut and just make sure whichever hole's the oblong, the oval one, you can go in through. So when it comes to putting the back ones in, Remember the bracket goes in the back for your brake hose. So, and when it goes up into the top of the tower, the flat spot goes towards the center of the car. So you just want to make sure that you line up your stuff that way, because these studs won't actually fit through, they only go in one way. So you want to make sure that they go in the way it's supposed to, otherwise it won't work. So I'll put them up in there. And this one, you definitely need someone to help you out because you're so far away. And with this one, guys, the lateral links and the trailing arm, they have so much tension pushing down on it. You're gonna need to use a jack to jack up the knuckle to the right position, regardless of what kind of rod height you're going with. I brought the small wrench. And there are two different size wrenches, by the way, guys. One's the small one for the smaller rings and one's a bigger one for the big ring. So make sure you're using the right one. So guys, with this lower bolt, like we were having trouble with it before as far as getting it in and out. With this, I already have it all the way in and I can't get the nut started. So what I'm gonna have to do is push it back out a little bit so that I can actually get the nut on it, because otherwise I'm not gonna be able to get it on. So what I'm gonna do is take a punch, hammer and punch, push it back a little bit, and I gotta make sure I'm actually on the bolt, otherwise I'll ruin the threads. And I'm about to do that anyway. Do quite a bit of adjusting. It got kind of jammed up in here in the knuckle and in between the pinch here. But, you know, just kept adjusting it up and down and keep shaking the knuckle just to make sure it was settling, and then finally got the bolts in there. Definitely took a little encouragement, but anything's possible. Now I just gotta do that on the other side and we got them in. All right, guys, so I finally got everything at least bolted to where it's supposed to be mounted and everything. A little trick that I like is when I'm putting anything together with a particular piece, I don't tighten everything until I get everything started. Because if I tighten one thing too much, then it might not line up the bolt hole and I might have to move it just a little bit to get the other bolts to line up so I can start them. So anytime I'm putting something together, I always make sure that I just start them first and I won't tighten them until I get everything started so that I have everything on it and then I know it'll go together with no problems later on. All right, so I got everything locked in, the struts are in, everything's assembled. Now it's just time to adjust it as far as setting the spring tension, setting the dampening that I want, and most importantly, the ride height. So I got the flare going on, you know? So what I'm gonna do first is set the spring preload. When adjusting the preload, you want to tighten this bottom ring until the spring is snug and there's no play. Like right now, you see how it's moving up and down? There's enough play that that's not the way it's supposed to be. So I'm just gonna keep tightening this, keep moving this. Okay, so you can see now the spring won't move at all. I'm gonna go a little bit more because I kind of feel a little bit to play. And obviously this is all up to the driver, how they want their spring preload to be, whether they want it tighter or looser, but at least for setting it up at just a base setting, I'll leave that here and then just lock this bottom collar in. I'm gonna use the tool and the wrenches to actually pinch them together. After that, then I can adjust using just the top or just the bottom. If I wanna go to a lower ride height, I adjust just the bottom and wheel it down. If I want to raise the vehicle, then I adjust the bottom collar in this direction, or sorry, in that direction to raise the vehicle up. So think about it, you know, you're threading it in, you're making it shorter. If you're threading it out, you're making the car taller. So that's the whole idea. And then once you get the ride height that you're looking for, after I take all my measurements, I'll lock this top collar in and that'll set my ride height and then it'll be that. All right, wheels are on, they're tight. It's ready to put this puppy down and see what she looks like. It's not any lower than it was before. This thing's still high as hell. So obviously these springs on this one are a lot tighter than the ones that are originally on it. Either that or the springs are just worn out. Yeah, this has gotta go. This is obviously not gonna work. Yeah, if you guys have watched some of the other videos, when you set it down on the ground for the first time, you do wanna make sure you bounce it, because it's gotta settle the springs. Sometimes not everything is loaded the way it should be. So I'm gonna go around all four corners and do that real quick. All right, after adjusting these things 3 times now, finally got it down to where I like it. Not too high, but definitely not too low. Just tasteful. That's pretty much what I wanted, because the reason I did it in the first place was just because the struts were nasty and they're making a bunch of noise. But definitely going a little lower is always nice to do. And if you guys know what PA roads are like, they suck. They're terrible. Potholes, uneven pavement, all that good stuff. So I definitely don't want to go too low just because of the issues I'd be combating with on the roads around here. Because I want this thing to be a driver. I like to drive hard. So definitely want to make this thing functional and definitely not just looking good.